Welcome to the Coach Doctor podcast, a podcast where we discuss aspects of sports coaching from grassroots to grandstands. I'm your host, James Barkell, and on this podcast, we hear from academics who research coaching. We talk to coaches on the front line from development levels through to professional coaches, and we discuss other elements of successful sporting programs with experts and practitioners from a range of sports science fields, motivational psychology, strength and conditioning, and many other elements required for successful performance. If you'd like to know more about what we do at the Coach Doctor, you can visit our website, thecoachdoctor.com.au, and learn more about our services, or follow me on Instagram at thecoachdr or Twitter at James_Barkell for more regular information. Before I start the episode, I just wanted to let all the coaches and athletes out there know about a special deal that we've got going with Elite Performance Journals. EPJ make both coaches' notepads ideal for developing session plans and for reviewing or reflecting on sessions. And for athletes looking for that extra edge, they also have an Elite Athlete Journal designed around specific needs of up-and-coming professional athletes. For any listeners of the Coach Doctor podcast, you can receive 20% off on any of their products by simply going to eliteperformancejournal.com, check out all of their products, and when you check out, use the code COACHDOCTOR, all one word and lowercase, for a special 20% discount. In this week's episode, I talked to Reuben Williams and Ryan Walker from Sportsgrad. If you're not sure who these guys are, then check out the #1 careers podcast on iTunes and you will find them helping people getting jobs in sport. I thought this conversation would be a great way to help coaches and performance staff develop their careers and opportunities in sport by taking on the top 8 steps that Reuben and Ryan recommend for getting a dream job. We discuss tips for networking and using social media to put yourself out there. If you're looking to make sport your career, then this is the episode for you. Today on the Coach Doctor podcast, I've got Ryan Walker and Reuben Williams from Sportsgrad. Guys, are you able to tell me a little bit about yourselves, who you are, and what you're up to these days?
Sure thing. I'll go first. A little bit about me. I've been running Sportsgrad now for about 5 years. For 3 years, it was a very amateur YouTube channel. For the last 2, it's been a bit more cleaner and well run. Having Ryan jump on board definitely made a big difference to that. So I've been doing Sportsgrad for a while now, but before all that was working at Cricket Australia. So my background's in the sports industry, did a sport management degree. But then fell into the path of doing Sportsgrad, and I'm loving that now. It's very fulfilling now because the work that we do kind of scratches a lot of different itches. By nature, I'm a very curious guy. I'm a very ambitious guy, very adventurous guy. And so being able to run your own business allows me to scratch all those different things. I get bored very easily. I think if I can avoid solving the same problem 2 days in a row, then I've had a good day. So that's kind of a bit about me and what I like to do.
Love it. Yeah, thanks for having us, James. Bit about me. Similar to Ruse, similar background. Sort of did sports management and commerce with a bit of marketing at university, and always sort of had that itch to move into sport, but also sort of that entrepreneurship startup space as well. So out of uni, got a job at Cricket Australia, which is where I met Rubes. I think we'll get into later, but that was a great sort of 4 years of just learning about the industry and getting into it. And I guess what Sportsgrad's allowed me to do is to sort of, again, not using Rube's language, but scratch those two itches. We do love that analogy, and sort of work in that sports space, but also sort of really learn about the startup space as well. And I guess just, run your own show, I guess. So it's been awesome. Always been sport and had a little bit of experience in player management a little bit, and a bit of experience with a company called Dollar Shave Club back in the day. But very happy at Sportsgrad now. I think we're, what is it, Ruse? Probably two years in, or 3 years in, really. It's fantastic.
Awesome, guys. That's a great start. So you both started at Cricket Australia on the same day. You've got the same initials, RW, and now you're working together at Sportsgrad, a company you built together. Was this match made in heaven, or was it meant to be?
Well, I guess when you put it like that, it certainly sounds like it. We're actually dressed the same on the first day as well, as funny as that sounds. So it's looking back on it, it does sound like it's a match made in heaven. But look, a lot of work's gone into, I guess, what we've got today in Sportsgrad. And as Rube said, he'd done a mountain of work prior to, and during his time at Cricket Australia to get it off the ground, or at least the concept there, so that it could probably come back to it at a later date. So a lot went into getting off the ground, and then obviously we jumped into it very much when the pandemic hit, which sounds funny, but we kind of thanked the pandemic a little bit for our success, because of, I guess, the time that it gave us to have a crack at the podcast, first of all. I guess COVID helped us. I guess it was probably meant to be when we're at cricket. It enabled us to really connect with, each other. And, we sort of became really good mates straight away when we met each other. So, I'm not going to lie, I didn't think that one day we'd be running a business together. That wasn't in the front of my mind. But, as soon as I met Ruse, I knew, there was a great guy there. So, pandemic sort of gave us that opportunity to really, I guess, just connect with a portion of sport that we could really relate to at the end of the day. And I think it allowed us to be really honest and almost vulnerable a little bit, in a sense that people could then attach themselves to us. And that's, it's really only built on, being able to have a friendship with someone and a connection with someone, which I think me and Rubes do have. So, I won't say it was match made in heaven, but it certainly enabled us to get off the ground, which was great.
Listening to your podcast, you can definitely hear there's a chemistry, between the two of you, sort of bounce off each other. And, you've got a bit of similar senses of humor. So, while you're presenting some really important information in your podcast, you also present it in a really enjoyable fashion, which I think is great to listen to. So well done.
I'll put that down to Ruse, to be honest. I very much throw to him when we need to get back on track. So he's very good at steering the ship, which is fantastic. So it's very handy to have someone like that on board.
It's important that there's a good balance of entertainment and information. I think if you have one or the other, then it becomes a bit boring. But if you can mix it, then that's interesting to listen to.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to go back into the background of how Sportsgrad started. What happened to make you think starting a business and a podcast to help people get jobs in sport would be a good idea?
So when I was coming out of university, I was a very typical sport management student. I got into the degree just loving sport, not really having too much of an idea as to where I could take a career within the sports industry. And so in an attempt to try and find my own career path and build a career, I started reaching out to professionals in the sports industry to ask them, what do you do in your job? And what did you do to get to your job? And I would go back to class and I would talk to my classmates and say, hey, I had this great conversation with X, Y, and Z from the Port Adelaide Football Club or wherever it might be. And I'd ask them, have you made any connections in sport yet? And they'd say, oh, no, not really. I haven't had the time, just busy with other stuff. But this entire time we were getting drilled into us how important connections in sport were. It was an industry that's heavily reliant on who you know rather than what you know. And anyway, I could see that my classmates weren't making the effort to get out there and learn from people. But at the same time, I was getting this incredible amount of insight from people who were working at the Australian Open, Cricket Australia, the AFL, even the Cleveland Cavaliers and other international bodies too. And so I thought, if I could just record the conversations that I'm having and put them on YouTube, then there's at least another 400 people at university with me who are going to benefit from it. So that's what I started to do. In 2017, I created a YouTube channel called Sportsgrad, and I would go out and interview people working in sport. And I absolutely loved it. I learned a whole lot from it. And at the end of that year, I started my own career at Cricket Australia. And so this is end of 2017. For the next 3 years, this YouTube channel kind of sat by the wayside. It became quite difficult to do my full-time job at the same time as trying to, regularly record, edit, and publish interviews on YouTube. But then we get to April 2020, and Cricket Australia announced that 80% of staff have been stood down because of the pandemic. And I thought, gosh, this is probably the perfect window of opportunity that I'm ever going to get to try and run my own business. It's something that I've always wanted to do, but never knew how to. But I'd had this idea that had been brewing for 3 years now. So I thought, this is my chance to give it a shot. And so to try and go all in on it, I moved out of my place in Hawthorne in Melbourne, rented a beach house down in Lorne on Gradiston Road, and locked myself into this studio apartment for 8 weeks and started calling every student I could get in contact with to ask them, what problem do you have getting a job in sport? And so I created this massive wall of sticky notes next to my computer with all these insights on what issues they were facing. And then I thought, okay, how can I use that and put that into a product that can help people? The YouTube channel is taking far too long to produce and not really going anywhere. How can we make this something better? And that's when I thought, why not start a podcast? And I thought, well, doing this on my own has been pretty lonely work. Let's bring a friend involved. And so Ryan and I had been sitting next to each other at Cricket Australia for the last 6 months of our time there. And I thought, what a perfect person to bring into it. So I called him up one night and I said, hey, Ryan, do you want to do a podcast together? And he goes, yeah, why not? Sure. So we got to work on what this podcast could be for the next 4 weeks. And during that time, Cricket Australia was in the news talking about potential redundancies that could be made at the end of the stand down period. Anyway, we tried to block out that noise and kept recording, kept getting ready to launch this podcast. And then one day I get a call from my executive general manager who says, hey, Reuben, you've probably heard everything that's going on in the news. Unfortunately, your role has been made redundant. And I was like, Steph, this is really bad timing because next week we're releasing a podcast about how to get jobs in sport. And so I kind of grieved for a brief moment, but then got back to focusing on the launch with Ryan. And so 1 week I lost my job. The next week I put a podcast out about how to get a job. And I think the irony hit a few people in the head because 3 days later it became the #1 careers podcast on iTunes. And we were kind of sitting in our rooms in lockdown, watching our faces at the top of this chart, being like, what the heck? How did this happen? And so we realized that we had kind of hit a sweet spot. And then it was resonating with a lot of people. We use LinkedIn as our main channel to get it out there and promote the podcast. And we just kept running with it. And so for the next 6 months, from July to the end of the year, we recorded, I think, 50 episodes in that time, 2 a week. And it was during that period that I thought, I don't want to go back to another job. I want this to be my job. How can we commercialize it? And so subscription revenue stream became our primary product, this what we call the Sportsgrad community, which is a membership that people join to network with other people in the sports industry, and we connect them to our connections in sport too. And so we did that for another year, and then at the end of that, we received some seed funding from a group of angel investors who saw what we were doing and said, we absolutely love it. We want to help you guys. And so we announced that investment at the start of this year, which allowed Ryan to quit his job at Cricket Australia and jump in with me. It allowed me to stop living off baked beans and get an office together with Ryan so we can work together. And now we're over 2 years in. The community has helped over 250 people find jobs in the sports industry. We've got over 44 organisations who are inside the community, including all the big ones such as cricket, AFL, T20 World Cup, you name it. And we're just having a great time helping people get jobs in the sports industry because it's something that we struggled with when we were coming through, and we know how good it is to work in sport. We've both had the experiences at Cricket Australia of standing on the pitch in the middle of a test match whilst the game's going on, whilst, the players are running around thinking, how good's this? So if we can provide that experience for other people, then, we'll be happy to do so.
Great. That's amazing. It's a fantastic story. I really think you guys have done a great job, and Reuben, yourself especially, in terms of those early days to try and turn what's a big setback in your life into a real opportunity. So congratulations. It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I think definitely having no dependents and no mortgage definitely makes it a lot easier to take a risk like that and not try and find another job. But yeah, I thought, why not give it a crack?
So just a quick one. I'm very jealous that your podcast went top of the charts in the careers category in no time. What was it, in 3 days, you said?
Yeah. Yep.
Did either of you imagine this would be the case when you recorded it?
No.
not at all. I'd spent 3 years doing YouTube and had amassed a total of 30 subscribers. That's 30. So to get to number one on a chart of some sort was beyond me.
Wow. It's almost like you're walking down the street and people recognize you.
Yeah. Fair to say we shared that across all our channels. Yeah. We went bananas.
No, it's awesome, guys. Hey, I really enjoyed the 100th episode where you broke down your first 100 episodes, and also the episode with Donnie Singe for his straight up no nonsense approach. For our listeners out there, give me both of your top 2 episodes from your podcast, and why do they stand out to you?
Gee, top 2 is tough.
You can go more. You can go top 4, top 5, whatever you want. I just thought top 2 just to
definitely. I'm conscious of your audience as well, so I thought I've got a couple here that are really solid, I guess, in the sports science and coaching space. So we had Brian Taylor the other day, which is probably definitely not sports science, but he was outstanding. Brian, I think, is everyone, well, not everyone, but definitely a hero of ours, and it was great just to have him in front of us talking. But just hearing about the art of commentary and how he actually does what he does and why he does what he does was super cool. But one of my favourites a little bit early on was Fleur McIntyre, and she's the assistant coach of the Sydney Kings. She was a former tutor and lecturer of mine at the University of Notre Dame in Perth. So I knew she was always involved in basketball, but just hearing her go through, how she coaches, how she just simplifies the process of coaching and all the intricate details of what she actually does day to day was just outstanding. So I think Fleur actually was the head coach of Sydney Kings a couple of weeks ago, the first female head coach in an NBL game. So that one definitely stands out for me as a cracker. The other one would be Jason Chan from the Melbourne Storm. He's the chief medical officer. He was absolute classic, talking about his profession as an art and how you need to nail that, and as well as just hearing about the success of the Melbourne Storm. And I think, people, it probably doesn't fly under the radar, but people don't actually understand how sustained their success has been over the last decade or so. I think he'd been to 8 prelim finals in 10 or 12 years, I think it might have been. I might be slightly off there, but hearing about that and actually what they do to enable that, and, the central thing being culture within that club and how he contributes to that culture was just absolutely amazing. So there's probably 2 or 3 that I absolutely loved, that a few people could also have a listen to if they were interested.
How about you, Reuben?
Yeah, so my first favorite is the interview that we did with a guy called Tom Scollay, and he runs a business called Cricket Mentoring. And the reason why I love Tom's episode is because when you listen to him talk, it's so clear why he does what he does, which I think is the first step to getting a job in sport. You absolutely have to understand why you're here and what sort of impact that you want to make. And for Tom, he was a former professional cricketer, played a bit over in England, who didn't quite make it to the international level or the level that he wanted to get to. But he reckons he could have, had he had the right mentor that could have given him the feedback to help him elevate his game. And because he didn't have that person in his life, he wanted to be that for other young cricketers coming through. So he created his own coaching business. And off the back of that, he's now blown up on social media. I think he's got over 140,000 followers on Instagram. He's running coaching camps all around Australia and internationally as well, between the UK and India too. And so I think he's a brilliant guest because he really kind of articulates why he does what he does, and is a great inspiration for other people to dig into exactly what their impact that they want to create is for themselves too. Relating to that, my second favorite episode is episode 124 with Hamish McLaughlin, the Channel 7 reporter. If you watch the Olympics, you would have seen him hosting each night. I love Hamish's episode because he talks about the power of storytelling and connecting with the people that he interviews. And the reason why this is compelling for our audience and anyone who wants a job, is that storytelling allows you to connect to an interviewer. In our case, when we're talking about jobs in sport, if you come up in a race for a job and your resume on paper is equal with the other candidate, it's going to come down to whoever connected best with the interviewer. And that comes down to who can tell their story the best. And so again, like if you were to take a point out of Tom's episode, you use it to inspire you to find out why you want to work in sport. And if you could couple it with lessons from Hamish McLaughlin's episode, he would teach you how to take that impact and tell a story around it so that other people can connect with it and opportunities can open doors for you. So yeah, Tom and Hamish are two good ones that I really enjoy.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, telling a story, that sort of resonates with me because speaking to coaches, often the belief is that coaches need to try and tell the story as well, for their players to buy in, and that ability to tell a story and connect with all of the athletes in the program or in the room or whatever it might be is really, really important to, as I said, get that buy-in and get everybody on the same page. So really, really interesting point. So what do you think made the podcast so popular and why did it catch on so quickly and I guess spread around the whole world?
Yeah, I think we hit a nice little niche because we were so clear on who our audience was. And that didn't come through a whole bunch of market testing. It came just from trying to scratch our own itch. We've been sport management students who had no idea how to get a job in sport. And so we knew what those people felt like. We knew what they sounded like. We knew what they needed. And so we deliberately tried to appeal to just that section of the population. On the flip side, we could have created a sports podcast that talked about every bit of news in sport under the sun and tries to appeal to everyone, and it would have probably fallen flat. So I think the reason why we caught on was because we were very specific and targeted about what information we want to share to which audience, and that dictates the questions we ask. It dictates how we promote it on social media. So I think the more targeted and niche you can aim, the broader your appeal is, which is quite ironic, but it's the way it goes.
And how do you guys run the business side of things? Is it basically consultancy for individuals, or are you more like an employment agency, or you work with, I think you talked about a community working with different sports to find people that they can hire?
Yeah. So one of our sayings is, we're not recruiters, we're connectors. So there's really sort of two sides to our business, both centered around the Sportsgrad community, which is built up of over 400 members, all looking to work in the sports industry or currently work in the sports industry. So that's housed on a platform called Discord, which essentially lets us bring all those people together, but also run things like weekly events. So you've got Q&As, you've got webinars, you've got job fairs, all with industry professionals and organizations who are looking to hire. So that coupled with a hub of resources for people to watch back content, master application skills, prepare for networking opportunities, all these things that help them at the end of the day get that job in sport. So that's sort of one side which takes care of people wanting to work in the industry. But on the other side, we also work with organizations to provide them with quality candidates for their jobs that they're trying to fill. So they can, purchase space on our job boards and access talent within that community to essentially make their job a lot easier to hire people really quickly and easily. So as Reuben said at the top of the episode, we work with AFL clubs, we got, Cricket Australia, netball, sports tech companies around Australia, all who post their roles and engage with a super motivated audience instead of using, what I think is probably relatively outdated, a recruitment method of just posting a job and hoping for the best. They're actually able to engage with a really motivated audience that are wanting to work for them and wanting to get into sport because it's their passion. So there's kind of two sides to it. It's obviously that membership side and also our work with organisations. And we've got some partnerships as well. We've got a great connection with Deakin University and Spark Event Group as well that sort of enable us to hit some different audiences as well.
It's great. It's great. Yeah, no, I'd imagine that the people who have signed up are very proactive and they're really enthusiastic about learning more about the process of getting into a position, and also, I guess, the processes involved with a lot of positions. So, as you said, you're rightly trying to attract very motivated people. So, have you got any examples of some success stories that you might have had through Sportsgrad?
Yeah, heaps. The communities help facilitate over 250 roles in sport. One of the most recent ones that we talked to the other day is a guy called Jordan Hilton. This is a guy based out of Melbourne who's just finished studying data analytics and has just picked up a role with the Australian Institute of Sport, based out of Canberra. So once a month, he's spending a week up in Canberra. And we spoke to him yesterday about how it's going. He's literally only a few weeks in. And he said to us, one of the first things the AIS told us was that we want to invest in you for the Brisbane 2032 Olympics. And I was like, my God, that is amazing. We speak to so many people who tell us their ambition is to one day work for the Brisbane 2032 Olympics. And we're like, yep, fantastic. Knowing that full well, a lot of those roles are probably 5-6 years down the track. They're not going to become available anytime soon unless you're a director on the board or something. So for Jordan to get a role at the AIS and for them to say to him, hey, we want you to stick around for the next 10 years and help us bring more gold medals to Australia is phenomenal for Jordan. He's been job hunting for the last 12 months, did a postgraduate degree to try and upskill whilst he was job hunting and couldn't find anything. And now he's landed at the AIS with his sights set on the Olympics. So we're stoked for him. We had a podcast episode go out today with one of our other members called Brant Hubber. He has just got a job at the AFL in the commercial partnerships team. In my eyes, it's kind of like the ultimate business in sport entry-level job in the country. You've got the biggest sporting organisation mixed with the biggest sponsorship deals in Australia. So his role is to help activate the deals of Toyota, Crypto.com, Virgin Australia Airlines, those sort of things. And he's another member who's been in our community for over a year and now has got this dream job. And within a month, he's working at the AFL Grand Final. Another one is Saloni Pradhan. She is an international student who came from India to Australia to find a job in sport. She said to me when she arrived that she had two goals in mind. Number one was to meet Brett Lee, and number two was to get a job at Cricket Australia. And we haven't been able to find Brett Lee for her yet, but she has now got a full-time job at Cricket Australia. So there's a few that we enjoy.
Awesome. That's awesome. And I'm sure through her contacts at Cricket Australia, there's got to be an opportunity to meet Brett Lee at some stage. And
I'm sure
if Brett's listening to this,
yeah. I was going to say, James, Brett will be listening. So if you are Brett, get in touch with James. We'll be able to facilitate that.
Yeah, perfect. And I'll put him in contact with you guys and you can sort out the rest.
Fantastic.
Yep. Not a problem.
So, guys, my podcast is basically designed more for coaches and other staff within the coaching and management team. But when I came across your podcast and website, I thought to myself, this is a really awesome idea because there are so many coaches who want to work in full-time sport, but probably never really mapped out a pathway for themselves. Is Sportsgrad basically doing it? Well, look, I guess a lot of your podcasts are doing this, helping people map out pathways or coming up with strategies to try and direct themselves into professional sport?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we know that probably the biggest problem people have is, probably one, not knowing where they want to get into. They've just got that passion. And probably two is they don't know how to get to that job. So I guess, one of our main goals when we sat down and built this community is like, okay, how can we actually build that pathway that, a med degree or a law degree both have? You go through a process and at the end of that tunnel, there's light and you nail that job. So sport doesn't really have that. There isn't a perfect plan or a perfect pathway for you to follow to get into a job that you want. So I guess what we do is provide opportunities for people to probably discover the jobs that are in sport. I think everyone has that passion. Everyone sort of has the idea of I'd love to work there, but we're sort of shedding light on, these are the jobs that actually exist and this is what you do. And this is, you actually get that insight. So there's that, but there's also, discovering what people are passionate about, helping them discover what that actually is, and then allow them to meet the people inside the industry to then double down on that interest. So, we know that networking is a key element to get into the sports industry. So if we can allow people the opportunity to meet others and hear about what they do and make connections, and that's always a positive. It's absolutely who you know and not what you know. And pathways get built from meeting people throughout your network, and that's sort of the main pillar of what the sports trade community is about. It's about meeting people and finding out the information that you need to get there. So we're working on that pathway. I think it's pretty set. And I think, our platform allows people to put the stepping stones in place to be able to then find that job.
Do coaches or members of the on-field performance side of sports come to see you at Sportsgrad, or do you just focus on the governance and business side of sports?
We have both sides come to us. We have more on the management side just by virtue of what our background is, but I did a double degree in exercise science, so I have a level of empathy of what goes on. I've done a couple of internships, but definitely haven't spent too much time in that space. In saying that, the things that we advocate for and promote and push and encourage are fundamental to almost any industry. Our connections just happen to be in sport. And those sporting organisations hold positions in both the management and science side of the coin. So we definitely got more on the management side, but we've definitely got people on the science side too. And the resources that we have help those people as well.
I'd love you to tell the listeners some of your top points for getting a job in sport.
Yeah, well, James, if you cast your mind back to episode 100, you might have heard the 8 steps to getting a job in sport without getting lucky that we revealed on that episode. So the 8 steps to getting a job in sport is a distillation of all the pathways into sport that we have uncovered on the podcast. So we've done over 200 episodes now with people working in all different sports around the world in all these different jobs. And we have found that there's 8 steps that are consistent across just about every one of these jobs. So to try and kind of really simplify it for people, we've created this 8-step pathway that if you follow from start to end, you're going to put yourself in a pretty good position to get a job in sport. So I've cheated a little bit and got it in front of me, Ryan. I'm not sure if you can remember them, but
go for it, mate.
Sure.
Was it Ryan or Reuben who came up with the 8 steps, or was it a joint effort?
I can't remember. I think we both sort of sat down and listened to about, we had to listen to a fair few podcasts, and sort of come up with some highlights. And then we sort of got together and we probably had about 30, I reckon, but we managed to get it down to 8.
All right.
But yeah, I certainly didn't do them all. I think Reuben would have done a fair chunk of it.
All right. Yeah. Take it away, boys. Tell me your top 8.
Yeah, sure thing. So number 1 is take time to discover why you want to work in sport, because a clear vision is more attractive than a skill set. The other beauty of following this step is that if you know why you're getting into sport, you're going to have a much longer career as well, because burnout is quite common if you get into it for the wrong reasons. So number 1, dive deep into why you want to work in sport. Number 2, when you're starting out, acquire easily attainable opportunities at grassroots clubs, charities, and university societies. So when your resume is blank, you've got nothing to show for yourself, you need to have something to talk about in the future. The easiest way to have something to talk about is go to somewhere that doesn't ask for you to apply. So these are volunteer opportunities that you can start to build experience at, which leads me to number 3, and that is learn to create examples and learn to sell yourself. If you can do this, you will progress quickly. So once you go to this volunteer organization, if you can create examples of running social media or coaching athletes or, leading the warm-ups, whatever it might be, now you have something to talk about in the future. The second part to that is how you talk about it, because you can easily say, oh, I volunteered as the strength and conditioning coach at the local cricket club in Paran. And that might be the end of your answer. And that's the end of a lot of people's answer because they don't have the words to talk about it. But if you can explain and really just paint a full picture of what you did and your approach to outlining a program and how you led people through the different exercises and what were some of the results of their improvement over time, then you can start to paint a picture of the examples that you created for yourself. So that's number 3. Number 4 is invest time mixing socially with the types of people who will hire you, because if you can thrive here, then you have ticked cultural fit. Now, the reason why cultural fit is important is because you will end up spending more time at work than you will your own family. And the people making the decisions on who comes into the organization need to make sure that if we're spending more time with them than our own families, they better be good people. So if you want to be a good person who can fit in with the culture of these organizations, one hack that you can use to make sure you fit in is find them in other different social circles and hang out with them there, get used to how they coerce and mix and mingle and all that sort of thing. And then you should be able to step in pretty easily. Number 5 is LinkedIn allows you to publish your resume in 1,000 different ways at scale. And the beauty of this is that most people haven't figured this out yet. So this points to how you can start to get your name out there. Once you're starting to build examples of your work and you're starting to be a good cultural fit and start to mix around, how can you get your name further out there? Handing a resume in is one way of getting your name out there, but it might take you 2 hours of time to create, and then you send it through to Rugby Queensland and it's read by their HR manager, and it's either, read by one person or it progresses. But if you take a snippet of your resume and turn it into a LinkedIn post, you can be seen by thousands of people. So LinkedIn is a way of scaling how you get your name out there. And the beauty of that is that only 1% of profiles on LinkedIn actually post content. So there is a lot of free space. This is the point that a lot of people don't pay enough attention to. Number 5. So if you can remember that, get on LinkedIn. Number 6 is get comfortable talking to people who you don't know, because opportunities exist in circles of people who trust each other, and you're welcome to join those circles. So some people think that the circles of people who know each other in sport are locked and loaded and jobs just go round and round and round. That is not true. You are allowed to join those circles. Yes, they go round and round and round, but the reason they go round and round and round is because these people know and trust each other based on previous experience of what they can do. So if you want to break into that, you have to meet them. So if you can get comfortable putting your name out there, having conversations with people, start being liked by people in the industry, then you can break into that and opportunities will start to unlock themselves. So that is essentially get out there and network. Number 7 is discover your career path by pursuing your genuine curiosity. One thing that we come across with people who want to enter the sports industry is that they don't know what they want to do in sport. They might have seen Jerry Maguire or read Moneyball and think, all right, I want to be a player agent. That's the only thing I want to be. But it might not be what you're curious about. So if you know you want to make an impact in sport, the way to figure out what the right role is for you is to think about what problems are you most curious about solving. And if you dig further into that and scratch further into that, and it becomes something that you not only do 9 to 5, but you do when you get home, you do it on your weekends because you're so interested in this space, then over time, on a long enough time scale, you're going to be in the best person in the world at that, because if no one can compete with you if you're spending all this extra time at will. One of my favorite podcast episodes is episode 173 with Jacob Tober, who is a strength and conditioning coach who's created his own application recently. And he's the most curious person I've ever come across. He would go to university, learn a different bit of theory on exercise science, come home, apply it to himself, apply it to his friends, apply it to his athletes, and look at how it would improve performance over time. So he was just studying for the fun of it. And sure enough, he got awarded ESSA Student of the Year at the end of his university degree, which ESSA is a regulatory body. So if you can find out what you're curious about, you'll find the right job and no one will be able to compete with you. And then finally, step number 8 is invest so much time that it worries you if it will all be worth it, because that's when you know you're on the right track. So pursuing a job in sport takes a lot of hard work, a lot of will, and a lot of following a guiding light. And if it feels like it's tough, then you're on the right path. That's how you know you're doing enough. We interviewed a bloke called Ollie Gilbert, who was working 9 to 5 at KPMG, doing ridiculous hours, I think commuting from Melbourne to Sydney every single week for his job. But he wanted to turn his consulting job into a strategy position in the sports industry. So to get sports industry experience, he would go and work at the MCG on Saturdays and Sundays. And eventually he worked his way up the MCC over 2.5 years of working 7 days a week. And this allowed him to have sports experience coupled with his consultancy experience, which gave him what he needed to step into an organization called Gemba and start solving large problems in sport. But on that journey of his parents tapped him on the shoulder and said, Ollie, what are you doing? Like, something's got to give. We never see you. You get home, you dump your washing in laundry, and then, you come back and it's still there because you haven't had time to touch it. You barely see your friends. What's going on? So if you feel like you're putting in so much time that it's not worth it, or there's going to be a whole lot of sunk cost, keep going, because that's your barometer of if you're doing enough.
That's good to know, because sometimes I feel like that as well. That's giving me.
We all get it. We all get it. We still get it.
That's some really good advice, and I really appreciate you sharing that, because it can be so helpful to coaches and performance staff who want to make that next progression in their career, but face some hurdles in knowing how to get there. I guess in a lot of sports these days, there tends to be a number of former athletes going straight into coaching roles in both professional clubs and semi-professional clubs. And there are a heap of coaches who are putting in the years learning their trade and volunteering countless hours and doing all those certifications to often get overlooked. And I know, as I said, I know this is not your area of expertise, but what advice would you give to those coaches who don't have that professional playing experience but really want to try and break through? And I guess you might have almost just answered that in your previous comments, but I don't know if you want to build on that.
Yeah, I think it's when you think about why former players end up coaching, I think the number one thing that they have is empathy for professional athletes. And that allows their understanding of the game to help them be better coaches, relate to them, all that sort of stuff. And this idea of empathy is something that we've come across in all different areas of sport. Finn Bradshaw is the head of digital at the ICC in Dubai. He said the number one thing that allows him to create better digital experiences for fans is empathy for the cricket fan. I mentioned Jacob Tober. When he was learning about all these different fitness tests at university, he would go out and do the beep test or do the yo-yo test or do all these different training methods so that he could understand what it's like to do these sort of things that he was going to put his athletes through. So he wanted to have empathy for his athletes. So I think it does come down to empathy. If you can find ways to empathize with professional athletes and then do all those other 8 steps that we recommended, then that can be a way that even if you haven't made it to the elite level of sport, you can still play a role there.
Okay. So you guys have mentioned the word networking a few times, and networking is such a big part of getting some of these roles in sport. So I've got 2 questions around networking. Firstly, for introverts, networking can be extremely daunting. It's almost like asking the popular kid out at school when you're 15 years old. What tips have you got for like introverted people who really struggle to network effectively?
This was me coming out of high school and going into university. I was a very shy kid. And I hated the idea of networking. It took me until I think my 3rd year of university to actually go out and network. And the first time that I tried networking, I had the phone number of the Melbourne Football Club welfare manager, and I went to call him one day and had his number dialed into my phone. And just as I was about to hit call, I froze. And for the next 20 minutes, I was walking there around my backyard trying to press call on my phone, but I couldn't bring myself to do it because I was too scared about talking to this guy. And eventually, after 20 minutes, I pressed call. Wayne was his name. He picked up and he agreed to getting a coffee with me. And then at the end of that coffee, he said, "Do you want to grab another coffee next week?" And I said, "Sure." I mean, like, aren't I meant to be asking for your time? But sure, this is great. So we had another coffee the following week. And then halfway through that coffee, he offered me a job at Paran Junior Football Club in an football operations role. And that just kind of showed me that people in sport are like seriously kind and generous and giving. And having been in the space for years now, I understand that everybody has had a helping hand at some point in time. And so once I got over that first hurdle of, being too scared to talk to someone, realized that people were kind, it led to a reward of getting this job. I realized that actually there's a lot to be gained out of reaching out to people. And so I think for introverts, just lean into it. Don't dive headfirst into it straight away if it's not your thing. But soon enough, you realize there are a lot of kind people out there and it'll come naturally.
Okay, good. Some good advice. So another one is, when I speak to a lot of people in coaching, they're either great networkers or they think that networking is basically sucking up, and they'd rather do it on their own terms rather than playing the political game. So are people looking at things the wrong way if this is their belief?
I think it's the way you go about it. If you think you're literally catching up with someone for no reason other than to, put yourself in front of them and have no sort of, I guess, intention of following up that discussion, then, you could probably think that is sucking up. But I think, I'll challenge anybody out there to say that you can't learn something from someone that can then better yourself. It's not about the political game in my view. I think it's around, learning and actually meeting people who do different things to you that it's going to better your experience going forward. And when you do that and you show that you're genuinely curious in what they do, then you're going to form a relationship. And down the track, when they see a role that comes up, or they're hiring for their team, or they might just know someone who they think can help you, that is where that relationship will benefit you in the long term. So yes, I think, the word networking can sometimes get that connotation around, I'm literally just sucking up to someone. But, I think it's around changing your point of view about why you're actually doing what you're doing. And I think we encourage anybody to expand their network whenever they can, because at the end of the day, if you're a young coach, I would imagine that, the best way that you can learn is, one, hands-on coaching yourself. And you obviously start at a low level and build your way up. But you can't tell me that, catching up with a coach that coaches at a really high level would not be beneficial for you if you're asking the right questions. And it's not about just catching up with them for nothing. It's around understanding their day-to-day and how you can then adopt what they've been doing. So, we look at networking in sort of 3 different groups of people. And we've sort of looked at this, a lot, obviously, because it's a key part of how you get into sport. But we sort of see it as, you've got mentors, type of people that can help you develop and grow yourself and your skills. The next group is sort of, we call it a leads network, that can then push you onto other people that can help. So they're the kind of people that have a great network that can then assist you in going further in your search for information. And then the third group are people with that hiring power who are in positions of authority and they obviously have worked their way to get to that point, but they could potentially hire you. And I can see why people might think that catching up with that group would be playing the political game. But at the end of the day, you're going to learn a lot from that person. And if you can build a connection, then you never know. I think in summary of that, I think it's around the questions that you're asking. If you go in there prepared and actually have two or three things that you want to get out of that exchange, then it's absolutely fair game and genuine. So if you don't, you're walking in and your attitude is, I'm just going to get in front of this person and that's it, then absolutely, it's probably seen as disingenuous. So if you're prepared and got the questions there, then I think it's absolutely fair game and smart to do.
So networking almost should be about learning and growth and trying to build connections outside of your immediate community, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, when someone comes to me and says, hey, like, I want to work in partnerships in sport, and I say to them, oh, why do you want to do that? And they're like, oh, I'm just interested in partnerships. Well, I say to them, well, how do you know that? How do you know what you're going to be doing in partnerships? All you're seeing is the outside and what you can see on LinkedIn or social media or on TV when you see branding on a sports game. But the best possible thing that you can do is then, okay, I'm going to find 3 people in the industry, one that works in the AFL, one that works in state netball, and one that works at a grassroots club, and understand each of those 3 levels about what they do in partnerships. Because then they know, okay, what am I actually going to be doing in the partnerships? What do the jobs look like? And if they can resonate with those 3 people, get a really good understanding of it, then when they go for a job in partnerships, yes, they might not have had the experience, but at least they understand the day-to-day and what's happening in that industry. So for me, I think it's as much to build your network as well as also building your knowledge of that space.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for that one. So, guys, do you think your advice is specific to sport? I think you touched on this earlier. Or could it be applied to most areas of employment? And what would be stopping you guys from branching out into something like law grad or med grad? So we're looking at advising people to develop careers in other areas as well.
I think if you were to look at those 8 steps as our set of advice, it is specific to sport. There's a few that are really specific to sport. There are others that would cross over into any industry. For example, like taking time to discover why you want to work in sport. I think that's important to any industry, but it's incredibly important to sport because sport has this incredible ability to impact the entire world and everyone's way of life. And people are aware of this. So if you want to work in that space that is so incredibly influential to the entire world, you better have good intentions and you better understand why you're doing it. There are plenty of jobs out there where you don't need to know why you're doing it. You're just doing it for a paycheck. And there are a lot of businesses that are just set up to make money where you don't really need to have a clear purpose either. Sport's the opposite of that. Sport, you have to have a clear purpose because the impact is so profound on the livelihood of every single person on this planet. So I think that first one is quite nuanced to sport. And as well, like the second one, when you're starting out, you need to find easily attainable opportunities like grassroots clubs. That is because there are no clear pathways into sport. The nature of the industry is that these organizations just don't have them compared to, say, big 4 accounting firms where they have grad programs that will pick you up in the first year of university and take you through to a partner. And these people will have no idea what even hit them. They'll just kind of say, yep, I'll sign the box and that's my career sorted. You don't need to get out there and volunteer that much or get out there even network that much. These things are kind of highly specific to the sports industry. Yes, you can use them in anywhere, but the sports industry kind of relies on them much more heavily. In terms of what's stopping us branching out into, say, law grad or med grad, that probably comes back to why we're doing what we're doing. We love the sports industry because of its ability to create incredible opportunities to connect people and make, show experiences that, you can't script or are hard to cultivate. And for that reason, that's why we love spending our time and energy in there. We don't really want to spend our time and energy in other industries that don't interest us. Yes, we could do it, but that's probably better for somebody else to do.
I like that. I like the whole idea of why you want to be in something, and it's your passion, it's your interest, and therefore you're sort of following that passion, you're following that interest. So Yeah, another great answer. You guys have been fantastic today. Boys, just thanks so much for your time today. Before we leave, you're both active on social media and you've mentioned LinkedIn a couple of times. Are you guys happy to share your website, your social media sites with the audience in case they'd be keen to find out a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us at Sportsgrad, basically on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, any real social media platform, to be honest with you. And then, basically Brian Walker, Reuben Williams are pretty active on LinkedIn. So check us out on there. Less so on other platforms, but at Sportsgrad, and you'll find where we are.
Awesome.
And then if you want to check out the podcast, that's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as any other podcast platform. But if you're looking for a good one to start with, go straight to episode 200, which is how to get a job in sport without getting lucky, where we revisit those 8 steps and dive into different examples from the last 200 episodes that talk to each of those 8 points. So that's episode 200.
Awesome. Boys, thanks so much for your time. For anyone listening to this podcast, I'd really recommend you listen to Sportsgrad podcast as well, because there's some really good tips for anyone who is interested in trying to work in sports. So you guys have done a fantastic job. They're enjoyable to listen to. You know, you've got a little bit of banter from time to time. You've also got a lot of good, really good advice as well. So thanks for everything you guys are doing in the sports community. And I think, again, I appreciate your time today and the work you guys have been doing. So thank you.
Our pleasure. No, this was fun. We don't get the opportunity too much, so enjoyed it a lot. Thanks for having us.
Love being on the other end of the mic. It's good fun. But thanks, James.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Reuben and Ryan. What a story. Reuben was literally made redundant by Cricket Australia due to COVID, and only a week later was listed as the #1 careers podcast on iTunes after their first episode, and has now developed Sportsgrad into a strong business that has helped over 250 people find employment within the sports sector. Obviously, one of the key takeaways for me was the 8 steps to building a career in sport, but highlighted by this was the role of networking. It's not just a chance to put yourself in front of someone on the off chance that might be a job available, but more so to learn and to build connections within and outside of your own community. If you felt you learned some tips from today's episode, please go to the Sportsgrad podcast and listen to some other episodes for more hints and tips to building your career in sport. You can also check out the Sportsgrad website and social media pages for more information, and they host meetups in most major cities around Australia at different times throughout the year. So find out when your next one is on and pop down. I'm hoping to attend the next one in Sydney. As usual, if you've enjoyed this episode, please like it and leave a review and pass it on to friends and colleagues who may be interested. I'll catch you next time on the Coach Doctor podcast, and in the meantime, keep learning.